In tonight's cover story, Friday is the homecoming football game at Oak Park River Forest High School, and there will be a big crowd this year. The school is marking its 150th anniversary. And tonight, WGN's Mike Lowe has a fascinating part of that history, a story of former OPRF football coach Bob Zuppke, who went on to become the greatest coach in U of I history. But football, just one of his many talents.
The strength of the wolf is the pack. But here, it's the husky voice.
Come on, you gotta help him! That's a great punt!
Of Coach John Hoerster that speaks for the team.
Number one offense! Number one offense!
The voice is really an echo of football history.
Hey, offense, offense, offense! Come here, huddle up real quick!
The huddle, that staple of football, was invented here at Oak Park River Forest High School.
Let's go offense on three. 1, 2, 3. Offense.
And so was that timeless trick play, the flea flicker.
It's a nightmare for defenses because all your keys go out the window and you got to bail back and you got to recover and you got to do these things that are very difficult to do.
Both innovations were creations of football's mad scientist, Robert Zuppke, one of the greatest minds in the history of the game. In a closely cropped, parted haircut and a bow tie, he prowled the sidelines and crouched with his team in Oak Park more than a century ago.
We have a 1911 photograph showing the team on Phipps Field, which is in River Forest. That's where they played at the time. It's Zuppke sort of crouched to the left of the photograph, sitting there in front of his team. That was the second undefeated team at the high school level he coached.
Zuppke is a German-born, Milwaukee-raised basketball player who became a football genius, landing at OPRF High School in 1910.
Oak Park River Forest High School hired him to be athletic director, a history teacher, and the new football coach.
OPRF is celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. A special exhibit marks the milestone at the Oak Park River Forest Museum.
There's about 8 file cabinets that have a year by year, like every academic year.
Historical Society Executive Director Frank Lipo.
We also have about 40-some archival boxes.
Holds a collection of Zuppke's work, including a book published in 1922.
So as you go down just the table of contents, it's broken down the center, the guard, the tackle, the end, the backs, the relative positions of the backs, the fundamentals of running.
It's an early blueprint for football strategy.
All of these different facets of the game.
Over 3 seasons at the high school, Zuppke's teams went undefeated.
One of the things that he was getting a reputation for was not just for his team's play, but sort of for the flair they did it. That kind of thing really made a lot of people kind of sit up and take notice.
Then the University of Illinois came calling.
Yeah, well, I think my new title is Illinois Athletics Historian.
The University of Illinois Athletic Department's Kent Brown.
I do think that his creativity of coming up with different plays, different things around the game, different ways of doing things came probably from that left side of his brain.
Says Zuppke's imagination led to football mainstays like the huddle, the screen pass, the spiral snap, and perhaps the greatest trick play in sports, the flea flicker. It's designed to deceive the defense into thinking that the play is a run. And just when the defense commits to the ground, the running back flicks the ball, like a dog flicks a flea, back to the quarterback, who launches a long pass down the field, usually to a wide-open wide receiver.
You can't use those all the time, but you can pull them out and do them occasionally.
I think the more you develop unusual strategies, you're counting on your players to use their brains and not just always go to that same place in the line when you're the running back. It's like you have to think it through.
Zuppke's players towered over him. Though he was small in stature, nicknamed the Little Dutchman, he stood shoulder to shoulder with the giants of the era, Knute Rockne, Amos Alonzo Stagg, and Fielding Yost.
He was really one of the giants in the nation among football coaches. I mean, he was right there with all the great ones.
If you run hard and carry your knees high and don't crawl and sneak around out there, you've got a good chance to win.
Zuppke's teams won 4 national titles at Illinois, and soon the coach had a new nickname, Mr. Razzle Dazzle.
4 national titles, 7 Big Ten championships. In that era, that 14 to 27, right, in 13 years, that's a pretty impressive run that they had here.
In the post-Zuppke era, Illinois football won the national title just once more in 1951. In the 72 years since, the program has had its ups and downs and is now working to build its next great team. He was instrumental in the fundraising effort to build Memorial Stadium. Today, the football field there bears his name, along with a plaque celebrating his philosophical football maxims known as Zuppkeisms, like never let hope elude you. That's life's biggest fumble.
You're in the University of Illinois Archives in Urbana-Champaign.
But deep in the University of Illinois Archives, among a collection of photos and writings, interim archivist Joanne Kazmarek finds the image of a coach focused only on football doesn't show the whole picture. Zuppke was also a prolific painter.
And on the other side of him is this artistic expression that he felt like his whole life he couldn't do enough of.
He would take post-season painting trips, and over the course of decades, he completed hundreds of artworks.
I really just kind of made the decision like, listen, we got to have some wall space to do something with these things.
Dozens are on display at the university's Zuppke Gallery.
A lot of his paintings had to do with different types of landscapes or seascapes.
There are surreal landscapes, many of Midwestern forests, some of the Florida Keys.
Hemingway was one of his students at Oak Park High School, and so they had developed a relationship. So he would go to Key West or to Cuba and hang out with Hemingway during that time period.
And one portrait of his greatest player, the Galloping Ghost.
Probably his most famous painting is of Red Grange, and he actually gave that to Red as a gift, and Red hung that in his home until he passed away in the early 90s.
A thread of creativity binds his playbook with his paintings. Still, the seeming contradiction of a football coach who also loved the fine arts baffled some.
He writes, although I have been painting for many years, there are still people who seem to be surprised that a football coach should be interested in what seems to them an avocation far removed from football. I have lost more weight when painting steadily than in coaching the same amount of time.
And back at OPRF High School.
Gain of 5 on the play, 4th and 2.
Under the Friday night lights. A football team in blue and orange connects the community to the black and white photos of a century ago. Bob Zuppke's distant voice echoes and inspires a new generation of artists and innovators.
I think the biggest lesson I take away from his innovations is to continue to innovate and be curious and try new things.
In Oak Park, Mike Lowe, WGN News.
And thanks again to all the schools and museums that provided photos and information on Coach Zuppke.
Yeah, and coming up at 10, Mike tells you how Zuppke's flea flicker helped win the IHSA Class 8A state championship last year at the U of I.
Still ahead, WGN